onto my channel. So I do know that I said I was going to post on Thursday, and then this is Saturday when this is going up. I got a little sick right after Christmas. I wasn't able to film for Thursday, but this is the video I was going to film anyway, which is my December wrap-up. I know it isn't quite the end of December, but it almost is, and I really always love starting the beginning of the year with my top books of the year, followed by my most anticipated read. So we're going to do my December reading wrap-up now. I am currently halfway through the novel Woodkin, but I don't think I'm going to be able to finish it before New Year's, so I'm not including this in that because I haven't finished it yet, and I don't think I'm going to be able to, just at the rate that I'm reading it. I'm reading it really slowly, which is a bummer because I like it so far, but I just can't seem to like get into it to like really sit and power read it. Anyways, this month was interesting. I read 5 books this month, 3 full-length novels and 2 shorter novellas, and they're kind of all over the place when it comes to rating. So let's chat with what I have first. So this is Neverest by T.L. Bodine. I'd never heard of this author before. This came in my Twisted Retreat zombie apocalypse box, or whatever that box was called, survival box. This is a story about climbing Mount Everest. I have a really interesting interest in reading stories about climbing mountains like Mount Everest, and I will say that I found this book to be everything that I wanted Echo by Thomas Oiled Hoyvelt to be. I had a lot of high hopes for Echo after Hex, and it really disappointed me. I think I read that last year, maybe 2 years ago. But this was definitely a very similar premise, but done better. However, I didn't fully love the characters and I didn't love the execution, so this was a 3-star read for me. But I think that if it's one of those books where you are into like the horrors of mountain climbing, definitely check it out. This is definitely more of a situational horror than like a supernatural horror. They're very minor supernatural elements that kind of come into play at the very end. And I didn't quite understand why they were there if they needed to be there. I really don't actually think they did, apart to kind of make the ending sort of cute, but I kind of thought the ending was kind of BS given how it's kind of happy for our main characters, who I don't think does necessarily should have had that kind of ending, but whatever. Let's read what this book is about. 1 year ago, Sean Miller, journalist and mountain climbing enthusiast, reached the summit of Mount Everest and was never seen again. Unable to move on without knowing the truth of what happened, his widow Carrie insists on an expedition to search for Sean's body so it can be properly laid to rest. Tom, Sean's best friend and former climbing partner, agrees to serve as expedition guide and promises to keep Carrie safe on the mountain, despite their complicated relationship history. Guided by a travel journal left behind by her husband, Carrie ventures into the frozen, open-air graveyard of the world's tallest peak. But as Sean's diary and Carrie's experiences reveal, climbing the mountain is more than a test of endurance. It's a battle of wills with an ancient and hostile force protecting the mountain, and the dead do not rest easy at the summit. This book I enjoyed solely from like the mountain climbing perspective. I definitely liked reading more about Sean than I did about reading about Carrie. A lot of Carrie's chapters felt predictable and kind of dragged on, but as you near more and more of her actual mountain climbing experience, I kind of got on board. Like I said, the ending didn't wow me, but I did have fun reading it, and I thought it was a really good wintry read, but at the end, it just felt like something I have seen before, even though I did think it was better than Echo. It was very similar to Echo, and I also felt that the ending could have been or should have been different. And I really wish they had just removed the supernatural elements and kind of made it this survival horror story, because I think that that would have worked so much better. But it was fine. It was a fine read, and I do have a very beautiful edition. I don't think I showed you guys this, but I have this interior mountain here. This is the Twisted Retreat limited edition. We have this. I mean, it's just such a stunning book. So I love that. It's definitely one of those books that I'm like obsessed with because of how beautiful it is. And it was a fun winter read. Not my favorite, but definitely a fun one. That being said, what might be one of my new favorite winter reads is The Drift by CJ Tudor. I do have an entire in-depth review up on my channel about this book, so I'm not going to talk too much about it. but this was a 5-star read for me. I devoured this. I loved this book. Like I said in my review, the ending, the last few pages, I think definitely missed the mark a little bit for me. And they do have some questionable moments at the very, very, very end with a dog that I didn't think was necessary. It's very, very, very brief. It's only 1 sentence, but it did bother me. That is there. But let me read the inside flap for you. Hannah awakens to carnage, all mangled metal and shattered glass. After she was evacuated from a secluded boarding school during a snowstorm, her coach careered off the road, trapping her with a handful of survivors. They'll need to work together to escape, with their sanity and secrets intact. Meg awakens to a gentle rocking. She's in a cable car stranded high above snowy mountains, with 5 strangers and no memory of how they got on board. They are heading to a place known only as the Retreat. But as the temperature drops and tensions mount, Meg realizes they may not all make it there alive. Carter is gazing out the window of an isolated ski chalet he and his companions call home. As their generator begins to waver in the storm, something hiding in the chalet's depths threatens to escape, and their fragile bonds will be tested when the power finally fails, for good. The imminent dangers faced by Hannah, Meg, and Carter are each one part of the puzzle. Lurking in their shadows is an even greater danger, one with the power to consume all of humanity. If you want to hear more about this book, definitely check out my in-depth review. I don't want to say too much because I know that I'm going to accidentally give something away with this. This book was so twisty and turny and fun. I will say what they don't really talk about in the synopsis of this book is that this book is kind of a post-apocalyptic survival's tale. It's really interesting because it really lurks on the very, very beginning of a disease that comes and basically wipes out a large portion of humanity, and kind of how all of these different characters are dealing with that. And I kind of wish, I don't know actually, I feel like it's very apparent from the very, very beginning that that's what this novel is about as you're reading it, but I don't know if they opted not to market it that way because the mystery of how all of the stories connect is more interesting, or just because it was too close to the release of COVID. I know CJ Tudor talks about that in her afterword. But I really, really, really enjoyed this. I devoured it. There are a few scenes in this that, in classic CJ Tudor fashion, I found to be a little bit too extreme and unnecessary to show like the brutality of human nature. I didn't love that, but it is in there. However, those minor scenes didn't take away from how engrossed I was in this novel, and I had so much fun figuring out the mystery, and the setting was awesome, and it is just wintry, 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 wintry. So if you were looking for a really good winter horror read, definitely pick this up. It has all of the snowy vibes. It's great. I really, really loved that. Okay, next up, and I did also very briefly talk about this in my review of The Drift because I wanted to give people a little shout out on something to read before Christmas. But this is Candy Cane Kills by Brian McCauley, and I did get this in my most recent Nightworms package. I love Christmas horror. Finding a good Christmas horror book, though, is very, very hard because there seems to be very, very few of them. So I was super, super stoked when I saw this. I'm going to read the back for you. When Austin's parents drag him and his little sister Fiona to a remote cottage for Christmas, he's less than thrilled about the forced bonding exercise. But after learning that their holiday getaway was the site of a horrific crime, this family on the rocks will have to fight for their lives against a legendary killer, because Candy Cane is slashing through the snow with a very long naughty list. This is such a fun slasher. Such a fun slasher. It's set in like 2005, which is great. I was like 12 in 2005, so I'm about the same age as one of the main characters, Fiona. It felt very nostalgic to 2005. I loved the remote setting. I loved the slasher setup. I loved our slasher antagonist. I thought this was really fun. There were some twists and turns in this that I didn't see coming that were just kind of over the top and absurd in just classic like 80s slasher glory, and I loved this. So if you're looking for a solid, fun, sort of kind of heartwarming, but also kind of sad and depressing, but also like hilarious and gory and over the top Christmas slasher, this was great. This was so much fun. Like, I loved this. I hope this is made into a movie, like in Eli Roth Thanksgiving style. I thought this was great. I don't want to say too much about it because there's really not that much to say, except it will make you never want to flip a house or like stay in an Airbnb ever again. It's great. This is so much fun. So this was a 4-star read for me, just because it is kind of cheesy. And again, I felt that certain characters should have had different fates than they did, which was really sad, but that's a slasher for you. But I loved this. I really, really loved this. It's up there with like the kind of slasher style that I found in the original Clown in a Cornfield, where it's fun. It is a B movie in an A book form, if that makes sense. These are great. Okay, so next up, I read Wild Spaces by S.L. Coney. I literally got this in Nightworms. I don't know how long ago. I think it was in Nightworms. I think it was in Nightworms. It could have been, I think it was Nightworms. There's a chance it was Abominable Box, but I don't think it was. It looks cosmic-y. There's a dog on the cover, which kind of made me not really want to read it. But I did read the whole thing in one day. It's very, very short, and it was on my shelf for a while, so I did. I'm going to read the back for y'all. An 11-year-old boy lives an idyllic childhood exploring the remote coastal plains and wetlands of South Carolina, alongside his parents and his dog, Teach. But when the boy's eerie and estranged grandfather shows up with no warning and no sign of leaving, cracks begin to form as hidden secrets resurface that his parents refuse to explain. Meanwhile, the boy feels something within himself changing, physically, into something his grandfather welcomes and his parents fear. Something abysmal. Something monstrous. Okay, so this is cosmic, and it does the thing that I hate where, like, all of the cosmic stuff happen at the very, very end. It does hint and allude and, like, kind of build its way up to it for a while. But again, like, the cosmic nature of everything happens at the very, very end. It's a metaphor for something, but I'm not sure what. I think it's a metaphor for not being able to close out abusive family members, I think. I'm really not 100% sure. It's about basically the destruction of a family with the reintroduction of the grandfather and its effect on a child. This is an extremely depressing book. It reads to me like an indie drama that kind of masquerades as horror before A24 was a, like, widely known production company. Like, A24 wouldn't make this movie, but, like, A24 would produce a movie that was inspired by the movie version of this book, if that makes sense. There is not a necessarily happy ending for the dog. I found it extremely upsetting and unnecessary. S.L. Coney does try and make it kind of happy at the end. There's also this underlying tone from the very beginning of whether the dog is supernatural or not. And it kind of heavily hints throughout the whole book that it's not, that it is supernatural, but then maybe it's not. Like, it's very confusing. It's very depressing. I did not enjoy this book. This was a 3-star read for me. The more I remove myself from it, the more I dislike this book and kind of want it to be a 2-star read. But the actual prose of this book and the kind of emotional drainage this book takes on me, I have to keep it at a 3 stars because it did actually do that to me. There is definitely an emotional drain. It's very stressful to read this book. I did not enjoy reading this book. I think I'm happy I read it, though, just because there is this kind of deep intellectual moment within it. I just don't think I was the audience for this book. So I'm just going to leave it at that. It's really depressing. It's really depressing. And just the relationship between the wife and her husband and their conversations about how to parent their child is just, like, really realistic, except it's in such a weird lens of, like, maybe they know that the grandfather is kind of otherworldly. I don't know. There's a lot of open-ended questions, and I don't have the answers for any of them. This was a lot. This was definitely a lot, but it's really short. It's like 100 pages. Yeah, it's 117 pages. I read this in one sitting for the most part. It's very depressing. And then last but not least, I read Suffer the Darkness by Yolanda Stefestos. Stefestos? I'm so sorry, I'm going to say that so wrong. And this was sent to me by Darklit Press, so thank you guys very much. I hadn't heard of this author before, and I wanted to read this book because it just seemed really, really interesting. I'm going to read the back for you guys real quick. Kay Roscoe's daughter went missing in the woods 16 months ago, but when she returned, she's not the same person. She hardly speaks, doesn't eat, responds with extreme violence, and things get worse when she's released from the hospital. There's definitely something very different about Molly, and her reappearance is making strange things happen to everyone around her. I was so on board with this book for the first half, I want to say. This is another really, really short one. It's like 22 pages. Yeah, it's about the same length as Wild Spaces. I really liked the first half of this book. I thought it was really interesting. I really liked where it was going. I loved the introduction of ghosts in this and this kind of idea of like the dead can talk to you and guide you and help you figure out this mystery. I loved where this was going. I loved that this was going to be a story based on kind of the dysfunctional, broken family, and I loved the whole setup of this. And then it just kind of fell apart. And just characters kept getting taken out of the story. Questions were arising. I didn't understand where the mythology was coming from. It didn't feel like the author understood where the mythology was coming from, because it kind of felt like she was trying to force two different cultural myths to make sense as one. I left the book with a lot of unanswered questions. Our villain in the book is a villain who hides in plain sight, but figuring that out, one, wasn't gratifying, and two, became painfully obvious. So it just really fell apart at the end and became a completely different story and a completely different concept, and also extremely, extremely depressing from start to finish. A lot of horrible things happened to pretty good people. And I did not love this. Suffer the Darkness is a great title for this because it is dark and like everybody suffers. And it's a bummer because I really went into this thinking I was really going to like it, and then it just completely fell apart. I ended up hating almost all of the characters. They just make the stupidest, most uninformed, uneducated opinions based on their situations and what they should have realized, and it just completely goes downhill, and I was so bummed out after reading this book. And it did get 2 stars because, unlike Wild Spaces, where the prose really saved it from being one of my lesser liked books, the prose in this one just wasn't great. It felt very, very flat for a lot of it. It was a lot of telling, a lot less showing, whereas this book was almost too much showing and not enough telling. So yeah, this ended up being a 2-star, which is a bummer that I'm ending 2023 on a 2-star read, but I did start it, I believe, with a 5-star read. That was Brother by Anya Alborn, which will be on my top 10 list. I will spoiler for that, but I think a lot of people have figured that out if you've been watching my channel all year. Anyway, so that was my December. I had 1 5-star, 1 2 stars, and some books in between. I'm pretty happy with my December month. I was hoping to get through 6 books, but like the holidays, so that didn't happen. Anyways, I will be back with you guys in 2024. Very excited for that. Keep on the lookout for my top 10 reads of 2023, and I'm going to be doing, I believe, 2, it might be 3-part, of my most anticipated books for 2024. I have a massive, massive list this year. I'm very excited. So we will see. It's either going to be 2 or 3 parts. Hopefully it's only 2 because there's a lot to film. Anyways, thank you guys so much for watching. As always, I try to post every Monday and Thursday, sometimes on Saturdays. And if you enjoyed these videos, please hit the like and subscribe buttons down below, and I'll catch you on the next one. Mwah.